When we think about what a parent Googles at 2 o'clock in the morning, is my kid's behavior normal? Is it normal for me to experience this with my child?
There's a lot of guidance out there that's often contradictory. There are a lot of headlines that make us anxious about raising children today. I've been a practicing psychologist for about 30 years, and I don't say this lightly. I don't know that I've ever seen a harder time to be a parent.
This is not a warning to say, you're getting it all wrong. Like, don't get stressed out about the stress.
As professionals in the field, we want people to actually have access to this knowledge all the time and to be able to think, what are some of the ways that I can utilize science to be a better parent, a better caregiver, a better mom, or a better dad?
In this class on Masterclass, we want to release some of that stress and release some of that complexity. There's no one right way to be a parent, but with a couple of goals in mind and a couple of strategies, you and your child can have a wonderful time getting to know each other.
Hi, I'm Dr. Eliza Pressman. I'm a developmental psychologist, co-founding director of the Mount Sinai Parenting Center, host of the podcast Raising Good Humans, and author of the New York Times bestselling book, The 5 Principles of Parenting.
I'm Dr. Lisa Damour. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've written 3 New York Times bestselling books about raising adolescents. I have a podcast called Ask Lisa, The Psychology of Parenting, about raising tweens and teens. And I authored the Adolescence column for the New York Times.
My name is Karali Perez-Edgar. I'm the McCourtney Professor of Child Studies and a Professor of Psychology at Penn State University.
I'm Dr. Dave Anderson, and I'm a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. And this is Masterclass.
Parenting has always been overwhelming. Raising humans is a very huge undertaking. But today, the expectation is that we are supposed to just know what to do. We're supposed to kind of go with our gut. And what if our gut is questioning everything that we're doing? It is unprecedented that the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, put out an advisory for parents because parental stress has gotten so enormous that we need to acknowledge that it's become a health concern. I know as a parent that nothing gets me moving faster than thinking that this means my child's health is on the line. Stress is contagious. Taking care of ourselves as parents builds trust with our kids, and this trust will allow them to feel comfortable coming to us about their problems as they get older. And it will even impact how they relate to us in adulthood. We lend our nervous system to our kids. Children and caregivers are so highly attuned. Scientists can measure increases in cortisol levels in infants when mothers had increases in cortisol levels. So if your stress hormone is up, it also impacts your babies.
Parents give off signals to the world, our behavior, our voice, our body language, and those behaviors that are visible are fueled by underlying biological systems. And from the very first days of life, they take that signal in to understand, is this a safe world? Is this a threatening world? Is this a person I can rely on or not?
If there's one thing I would want parents to take from this class, is that our kids are watching us and paying attention to what we do. And we teach them far more with our behavior than we do with telling them things. To teach your kid how to handle stress well, you're going to want to model exactly how it's done.
A parent's mental health and well-being is extremely important to parenting. It is not optional. We have to understand what's shaping our own behavior and our own responses. If we are anxious, if we are feeling unwell, then we're not responding to our children based on their needs. We're responding based on our own needs. So with stress, We're thinking about the events that's happening around us and how we are responding to them and having to deal with the events right in front of us. In anxiety, it's what we think might happen and what we worry about. It's looking at the future. And with trauma, we're dealing with things that happened in the past that still live with us today. So stress is the now, anxiety is the future, and trauma is the past.
Good job, Lil.
Parenting is creating a social relationship with this other person. And just like in any relationship, we need to take a step back and think about, how do we respond to things? What are the things that make us stressed or make us less than joyful to be around? And we have to work on that. If you're an anxious parent, thinking about ways to deal with your own anxiety so you're not mirroring that into the child. One of the things that research has taught us is that for the vast majority of children, there is no set specific way that we have to interact with them to be sure that they turn out okay, that their anxieties don't take over. For most children, loving, kind, contingent daily interactions are all we need. And that is how we build stronger, more resilient children.
It feels like you're supposed to be not only raising kids, but raising kids who are optimizing every moment of their development so that they're becoming superhuman. Somehow we feel less than as parents if we're not focused on every single detail and getting it right.
Trying to do too much all the time actually can be harmful for the child, and it's definitely harmful for the parent.
Optimization is unsustainable. Working hard, even if it's uncomfortable, is actually how we grow. But in order for that growth to really take hold, we need enough recovery. Think about it like physical strength training. If you go to the gym and work out on the exact same muscles every day, we all know that before long, you're going to have an injury. Now, injury is basically the physical equivalent of psychological burnout. Here's what I have to tell you. What really helps kids grow is doing things that they like or that are challenging, or sometimes both, and then having a chance to actually rest and recover and restore themselves.
There's actually a tremendous amount of learning that happens in our everyday interactions, and we can bolster those everyday interactions without this idea that we have to put it on overdrive. When we focus on optimization, we lose out on the most powerful environment we can set up, the relationship.
One of my favorite sayings in parenting is that we are shepherds, not engineers. That we help guide our kids, but we can't prescribe who they're going to be or how they're going to live their lives. In order to guide somebody, you need to know them. And one of the most joyful parts of being a parent is getting to know your kid and enjoying who they are. So my guidance, above all, is make time for what I would call a agendaless hangout. Time where your kid can take the lead, tell you what they're interested in, ask you questions, or even actually just be quiet when with you. There's so many times in parenting where we do have an agenda and we need to have an agenda. And that's okay, you can't get around that. But I hear from kids all the time that their favorite time with their family is when there's not a big plan, not high expectations, not a lot of questions, and they're just getting to be together.
It doesn't need to be defined by enrichment. It just needs to be defined by connection. Perfect parenting is the enemy of good parenting. You want to cultivate healthy, connected relationships, and you cannot do that if you're fixated on perfectionism. It eats away at your capacity to take care of yourself and others, and it is highly linked with a number of mental health challenges. So we're increasing our anxiety, we're increasing our rates of depression, we're increasing our substance use or misuse. If you want to learn more about your relationship to perfectionism, see how you rate on the Frost multidimensional scale. Are you extremely concerned about mistakes? Do you have super high personal standards? Do you have the sense your parents expect too much from you? Or are they highly critical? Do you doubt that you're getting things right? Do you have an excessive preference for order? Take a look at this and see if you're modeling some of that behavior, because then you can make adjustments.
When we look at the research, girls are more likely than boys to struggle with perfectionism. And when we try to understand why this is true, there are a few things at play. One is that we socialize girls to be more responsive to how adults are feeling about them at any given time. And so when adults are disappointed, girls are socialized to take that harder, and they will work harder as a result to avoid disappointing adults. So if you have a child who's a perfectionist, then you need to say to them, if you're flooring it the entire time, you're never going to make it. Be efficient with your energy and decide when you need to floor it and when you can coast.
We praise martyr moms. In order to be this amazing mom, you need to sacrifice your health, your mental health and your physical health. And you'll get to your mental health and physical health once you've raised your kids. But if you find yourself filled with anger and rage when you are not feeling appreciated, if you find yourself wanting to say or saying, I've had it, do you know how much I do for you? And just losing it because you feel like I've given up everything for you. Certainly it should feel like we're giving up some things when we become parents. We're always gonna choose our kids first. But think about how you can choose your kids and center your kids without teaching them the lesson that you need to disappear so that they don't learn the lesson that they need to disappear. And the other really important message that we need to understand when we're martyr moms is that we're saying to our kids that we don't experience satisfaction, joy, and purpose in the absence of caring for our kids. I don't want our kids to feel pressure to be a certain way in order to give us purpose. So that's a huge motivator to let go of this martyr mom idea. My mother was a reading specialist, and she said to me when I had my first daughter, you don't want an early reader. And I was like, what? Why? That seems great. And she said, because early readers, everybody praises them for how amazing they are at reading. And eventually everybody reads. And so now they've lost the thing that they got so much attention for. When you start to get that boost from external praise, you're searching for that for a lifetime. We're not here to say, don't sign your kids up for violin or don't put your kids in a setting that's super competitive. If that's right for your kid and that's right for your family, go for it. What the research tells us is that worthiness is more important than any of those things. So we want to make sure that our kids understand their worthiness is in being who they are, not in any of their achievements. And so if you help your kids understand that who they are is what's interesting to you, whether or not they come to you to talk to you about a video game or a book they're reading, we want to show them that that is interesting to us. Whether or not your kids are accomplishing things that the outside world finds awesome, we have to kind of offset what the messaging is in the rest of the world. So it doesn't mean that you can't have hopes and dreams and goals for your kids. It means that your kids must know that there is a distinction between what they do and who they are, and that you are loving them through all of it. A lot of this work goes back, again, to us. If you don't believe that you are worthy in the absence of your accomplishments, how in the world can your kids truly believe that, even if you say it to them? And so that's our real challenge, is are we expressing in our actions what we're saying with our kids? And so one of the things to do is to pay attention to not just sharing your successes, but sharing the process and sharing the failures. Your mistakes are necessary for your child to grow into a mentally healthy person. Please hear that, because you're going to make mistakes, but the self-compassion part is critical. Not only do we want to raise our kids in a way that unburdens them from feeling like the goal is being perfect, we also want them to see how we treat ourselves when we make mistakes. And so a concrete way to do that is to come home and say out loud, like a sportscaster, when you're blowing it, or when you notice that you've made a mistake. And you might even do that with burning the chicken. Whatever you're doing, instead of doing it with self-loathing, you're doing it with compassion, maybe a little sense of humor, and just sharing that you make mistakes and that that's expected. You might come home from work and say, I blew it today. When my oldest daughter was 9, I got upset about something and my eyes welled up with tears. And she said, moms aren't supposed to cry. And I had such a moment because I know better. I know that kids need to know that we have the range of human emotions because we're human. And yet I never showed her that. And here she was at 9 years old, anxious because she didn't know that it was okay that I had feelings. Now, I'm not saying that we're supposed to go to our kids and use them as our friend who's gonna make us feel better. But they can see that we have emotions, that those feelings that come up in us are not dangerous, and that we have appropriate reactions to things because we're human.
The good side of perfectionism is striving for excellence. And when we're raising kids, that's something we should try to do because we really care about them and we want to do right by them. The bad side of perfectionism is beating ourselves up when we come up short. So, for example, say that you got mad at your kid in a way that felt uncomfortable for you. So you didn't meet your own standards. It's important to not berate oneself when we make the occasional mistake, both because it's unsustainable for us as parents, and also we don't want to model that for our kids. So go ahead and strive for excellence. I encourage you to do so. But when you run into the occasional hiccup, move on.
You're doing it.
I think reflection is the unsung hero of parenting. When you reflect, you can think back to your experiences being parented so that it doesn't sneak up on you in those everyday interactions with your kids. When you have the intention to reflect, you give yourself more of a chance not to be reactive. And this can start as soon as you decide, I'm having a baby, I'm starting a family. That's a wonderful time to think, what am I looking for? What did I get when I was parented? What part of that do I want to take? What part of that do I want to get rid of? When you do this, this reflection helps you break patterns that are no longer serving you.
Parenting is always informed by the society you live in and the culture you came from. There is no one parenting. For families who are marginalized or minoritized, who are immigrants, parents of color, we are often balancing our traditional views of what parenting is or should be, what goals we have for our children, in the context of a larger society that may have different rules for what parents should do and different achievements of what's good parenting outcomes or not so good parenting outcomes. And it's a tightrope and it's a balance. And we question ourselves because we're getting conflicting messages. The other thing, of course, is that our children are often growing up in and interacting with environments very different than the ones we grew up in. And they're giving us feedback. And kids tend to be very dramatic, and they use words like always, never, everyone. Everyone gets to do this. I never get to do that. Why do we always have to do this? And parents need to think about what are the things that informed their own growing up and their own parenting versus the world in which their child is growing up in. When we see the statistics on parental stress, we often don't understand or don't study and talk about the long-term processes. And we need to find the best ways to reach our goals while allowing ourselves to be healthy and allowing ourselves to enjoy our relationship with our children. In our modern society, parents are often putting a lot of pressure on themselves to create the just right environment for their child. And that leads to parental burnout. It leads to worse mental health in the parent. And at the extreme, we can see that some parents lash out and it can harm the child.
We need more support systems in place. So finding your village isn't just important because you need other hands to hold the baby or someone else to pick your child up if you're running late. But you need someone who you feel safe enough to come to if you're struggling. We tend to give up that village when we have our babies. We tend to run out of time, understandably. And another thing that we can do is let our kids know that we have separate interests from just being their parent, that we enjoy other things. They can share in that enjoyment. Maybe we can take them to the theater and they find out that they love theater right alongside us. But we also can go without them because it gives us joy and we want to experience that joy. Maybe we go for runs because we really like, I don't, so I don't know why I said go for runs. So the idea of taking a 10-minute walk with a friend feels like, I don't have time for this. This is a luxury, but it's not a luxury. It's actually really important. We know from decades and decades of research that relationships are everything. They are the most protective thing in our lives. They are the best way to live a long life. They are the best way to build resilience in kids. In the absence of relationships, we cannot thrive as parents. And when you do not feel alone, you feel so much more empowered to take on this enormous responsibility. It's better for your kids. It's better for them to see you have close relationships. It's better for them to see that you're willing to take time for close connected relationships. You're modeling for your kids that dynamic in friendship, which is going to be so important for them as they grow into developing people. And you arrive more available to them because your cup has been filled.
As parents, we don't get enough time to take care of ourselves, and that's just the reality. But the key question we want to ask ourselves is when we get a break, when we get some downtime, have we used it in a way that when we come to the end of that time, we feel better than we did before it began? I've certainly been guilty myself of, having some time where I could relax, and instead I get on my phone and I just start scrolling, and I actually walk away from that time feeling worse than I did before the time began. So one goal with our limited recovery time is to use it doing things that actually leave us feeling better. A second thing is to put plans for self-care on your calendar. Put things that you're going to enjoy in your schedule and protect them. We have research showing that being able to look forward to that lunch with a friend or getting your nails done is a benefit unto itself. Of course, it's nice to have the lunch. Of course, it's nice to get your nails done. But there's an added bonus of knowing that it's coming. The third thing, and this is the most efficient, and I think actually the most important, is that when you are finally enjoying self-care, letting yourself recover, don't feel guilty about it. The way I think about it is that guilt-soaked recovery isn't recovery, and you need to recover. So find what works for you, protect it in your calendar, and then when you're doing it, go all in.
The moment of restoration is hard, and it is a privilege to be able to engage in certain activities. And so when you can't, we need to figure out the good enough. We are sometimes good enough parents, and we're sometimes good enough self-care. It can't necessarily be, I take 2 hours every afternoon to meditate. So let's choose. Let's pick the one you really want to do so that the child gets an activity and you can keep your sanity. We are the adults in the lives of these children. We are the ones who create a safe environment for them. And that takes a lot of strength on the part of parents. It takes energy. It takes discernment. And to deal with anything that's difficult, we have to be healthy. So dealing with our needs, making sure we're happy and healthy and are doing well, gives us the power to then be open to the needs of our child and to meet them where they are. Remember, you will change over time as a parent because your child will change and need new things from you. And also because you will continue to grow as a person.
Now that we've talked about ways for you to take better care of yourself, it's time to look at different parenting styles. What's the gold standard for parenting styles? We're going to tell you in episode 2.